At the core of most toxic relationships lies manipulation. It's subtle, often hidden beneath a layer of charm or sweetness, but it's one of the clearest signs of an evil person in your life. Manipulation happens when someone tries to influence or control your thoughts, actions, and decisions, often without you even realizing it. This can manifest in many forms, from guilt-tripping to playing the victim, to using your vulnerabilities against you. One of the most insidious forms of manipulation is when they play on your emotions to get what they want. For instance, they might say something like, "If you really love me, you'd do this for me," or "I can't believe you're doing this to me after everything I've done for you." This creates a sense of obligation in you, making you feel like you have no choice but to comply with their wishes. In these moments, you may start to question your own feelings, motivations, and even your decisions. Over time, manipulation can become so subtle that it feels like you're walking on a tightrope, constantly trying to appease this person or predict their reactions. They might twist your words, exaggerate situations, or make you feel like you're always in the wrong. Even when you're sure you're in the right, they'll make you doubt your own perception of reality. This form of manipulation is often referred to as gaslighting. It's a psychological tactic that creates confusion in your mind, so you no longer trust yourself or your understanding of events. But manipulation doesn't just stop at emotional tactics, it can also involve more practical methods of control. For example, they might try to influence your choices in everything from your career, your friendships, to your hobbies or interests. They'll make suggestions in a way that feels like advice, but is actually coercive. "I think it'd be best if you didn't hang out with them anymore," or "I've always thought you'd do better if you took a different path." Over time, these seemingly harmless suggestions can chip away at your independence, pushing you further into their control. Manipulation thrives in environments where one person has more power or influence over another. In these cases, the manipulator uses this power imbalance to secure their advantage, often without the other person realizing it. They may convince you that they know what's best for you, so you stop making decisions for yourself and instead defer to them. This creates a cycle where you're always seeking their approval or validation before making any major choice, leaving you feeling small and dependent. Control can also be exercised through the use of information. A manipulative person may withhold or distort information to create dependency. They'll make you feel like you need them for answers, for clarity, or for support. In a relationship like this, you may feel confused or disoriented, unsure of who to turn to because they've slowly isolated you from others who could offer guidance. They control the narrative and position themselves as your only ally. In some cases, manipulation can even show up in the form of love bombing in the early stages of a relationship. At first, they'll shower you with affection, praise, and attention, making you feel special and valued. But this is often a tactic to gain your trust quickly, only to later manipulate you once they have your loyalty. It's about securing your emotional investment so that you feel guilty when they begin to demand more from you. The danger of manipulation and control is that over time, it erodes your ability to make independent choices and feel confident in your own judgment. You begin to doubt yourself, wondering if you're being too sensitive or overreacting. It can make you feel like you're constantly in a state of emotional turmoil, unable to escape the pull of this toxic person. The key is to recognize the signs early before they've managed to completely control your thoughts, emotions, and actions. One of the most alarming and telling signs of an evil person is how they treat others, especially those they perceive as weaker or in a more vulnerable position. Tearing others down is not just about criticism, it's a deliberate attempt to diminish someone's self-worth, often in a way that chips away at their confidence and sense of identity. These individuals do this because, in their twisted way of thinking, bringing others down makes them feel superior, more powerful, or in control. At first glance, the behavior may seem like innocent teasing or a playful jab, but when it's a repeated pattern, it becomes clear that this is an attempt to belittle and insult. This type of behavior usually manifests in cutting remarks, sarcastic comments, or overtly judgmental statements. For example, they may undermine your successes by saying things like, well, it's not like you did anything that impressive, or anyone could have done that. You're just lucky. These words can sting because they diminish your achievements and make you question the value of your own hard work. What's even more dangerous is when the person starts attacking your character or your worth as a person. They might criticize your values, beliefs, or personality traits in ways that make you feel as though you're flawed or inadequate. They could say things like, you're too sensitive, or you'll never amount to anything if you keep thinking that way. Over time, this steady stream of negativity wears you down, especially if it comes from someone close to you, someone you trust. This person may make you believe that their criticism is the truth, and your self-esteem can take a serious hit. An evil person doesn't just tear you down, they target your vulnerabilities. They're often excellent at identifying your insecurities and will exploit them to further their own agenda. For example, if you've ever shared with them your fear of failing or your anxiety about a certain situation, they will use that information against you. They may tell you, see, I told you you couldn't handle it, you'll always fail at that, or you're just not cut out for this. These kinds of comments are designed to exploit your deepest fears, making you doubt your abilities and second-guess your worth. Moreover, tearing others down is not only about verbal insults, but also about subtle forms of passive-aggressive behavior. The manipulator may withhold praise or acknowledgement when you achieve something significant, creating a feeling of neglect and disappointment. They might play mind games where they act like they support you, but their actions say otherwise. For example, they could act distant when you succeed, or they could be overly critical of small things that don't really matter. It's an insidious form of emotional warfare that leaves you questioning your sense of value and self-respect. Sometimes they will use others as a means to hurt you. They might gossip about you to others, spreading lies or half-truths with the intention of undermining your reputation. They want to make you seem unreliable, untrustworthy, or less capable, even if you've done nothing wrong. This public attack on your character can be incredibly damaging as it plants seeds of doubt in the minds of others, which can affect your relationships and professional life. A particularly toxic form of tearing others down occurs in relationships where there is a significant power imbalance. For instance, in an abusive relationship, one person might engage in verbal abuse, belittling their partner or family members, frequently calling them names, or dismissing their opinions. Over time, the person on the receiving end of this verbal assault begins to internalize the criticism and feels as though they are not worthy of respect or love. This constant devaluation can leave the victim feeling small, isolated, and unsure of their own value. An evil person may also manipulate others into turning on each other, setting up situations where people feel forced to compete or criticize one another to gain their favor. This is often seen in toxic work environments or social circles where a manipulator sets individuals against one another to maintain control over the group. They'll pit people against each other by spreading rumors or playing favorites, creating a sense of division and chaos that makes it easier for them to manipulate the entire group. This behavior isn't just about controlling others or gaining power over them. It's a manifestation of deep insecurity. A person who feels small or unworthy will often seek to make others feel the same way because in doing so, they believe they can level the playing field or make themselves feel superior. The irony is that, deep down, people who tear others down often do so because they are deeply insecure and frightened by their own perceived weaknesses. By diminishing others, they attempt to mask their own flaws and fill the void within themselves. When someone consistently tears others down, it's important to recognize that this is not about you, it's about them and their inability to build themselves up without dragging others down. While their words may sting, they are a reflection of their own inner turmoil and lack of emotional health, not an accurate representation of your value. These actions are not about you being less than them, but about them using tactics to maintain control, power, or simply to cope with their own feelings of inadequacy. When someone in your life intentionally isolates you from others, it's one of the clearest signs that they may not have your best interests at heart. The process of isolation can begin subtly, often masked as concern or care, but it is at its core a manipulative tactic used by toxic individuals to maintain control over you. They make you feel like you don't need anyone but them, or worse, that other people in your life are somehow a threat to your well-being. This behavior is designed to weaken your support system, making you more dependent on them and easier to manipulate. It often starts innocuously. Maybe they discourage you from spending time with certain friends, or they express discomfort when you plan activities with family. Do you really think it's a good idea to go out with them tonight? Or, I thought we had plans this weekend. Don't you care about our time together? At first, these might seem like small requests, but over time, they become pressure tactics. Slowly, you may start choosing to spend more time with them, leaving behind relationships that once nurtured and supported you. The ultimate goal of isolation is control. Once they've distanced you from friends and family, they become your primary source of emotional support, advice, and attention. They manipulate you into believing that no one else understands you, or worse, that others are somehow trying to undermine you. This makes you more reliant on them, and they gain a level of control over your decisions, emotions, and actions. They become the only voice you hear, the only perspective you trust, making it incredibly difficult to see the situation for what it is. Isolation isn't always a physical thing. Sometimes it manifests through emotional isolation. They may dismiss your feelings, tell you you're overreacting, or invalidate your experiences. You're being too sensitive, or it's not a big deal. Stop making a fuss, or common phrases in these situations. Over time, these repeated dismissals can leave you feeling like you're alone with your emotions, without anyone to turn to for understanding or validation. Your emotional landscape becomes a minefield as you second-guess your instincts and wonder if your feelings are wrong or exaggerated. This emotional isolation slowly builds walls around you, and before you know it, you feel cut off from your own sense of self. But perhaps the most destructive form of isolation happens when lack of empathy accompanies it. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. It is the cornerstone of healthy relationships. When a person lacks empathy, they are incapable or unwilling to see the world from your perspective. They cannot feel your joy, your sorrow, your triumphs, or your pain. They might be emotionally distant, indifferent to your struggles, or completely dismissive of your needs. When someone lacks empathy, they treat others as if they are mere objects in their lives. They might listen to you talk about your struggles, but rather than offering comfort or understanding, they respond with cold indifference or even frustration. You're always complaining, or why can't you just get over it? These responses aren't just unsupportive, they're dismissive of your experience as a human being. They refuse to validate your emotions, leaving you feeling unheard and unseen. A person without empathy cannot truly connect with others because they are incapable of seeing past their own needs, desires, and feelings. They don't recognize when you need emotional support, and worse, they often exploit your vulnerability for their own gain. In these relationships, you are not allowed to show weakness or vulnerability, because doing so would make you appear less than in their eyes. They may mock you for your feelings or belittle your struggles, reinforcing the idea that your emotional world is unimportant. The absence of empathy also means that they are unable to offer care or compassion when you are in need. For instance, if you're going through a hard time, whether it's a loss, a personal challenge, or even a moment of self-doubt, they may respond with comments like, well, everyone goes through stuff like that, or you need to just toughen up. They refuse to acknowledge the depth of your pain or the uniqueness of your experience. In their eyes, your struggles are irrelevant because they are too focused on their own needs and priorities. Lack of empathy often goes hand in hand with self-centeredness. In relationships with toxic individuals, it's clear that everything revolves around their comfort and desires. You're expected to be emotionally available for them, but when you need support, they aren't there for you. They may also play the victim, constantly drawing attention to their own needs while disregarding yours. I have it so much harder than you do, or why does everything always have to be about you? These statements are designed to shift the focus away from your emotional well-being and back to theirs, perpetuating the cycle of emotional neglect. When combined with isolation, the lack of empathy can have devastating consequences on your mental and emotional health. If you are made to feel invisible, dismissed, or invalidated by someone close to you, your confidence begins to erode. You might start doubting your self-worth, feeling as though your needs don't matter, or even questioning if you deserve to be heard. As a result, you may withdraw, not because you want to, but because you've been made to believe that your emotions are a burden to others. Over time, this kind of emotional abuse can leave you feeling small, helpless, and completely alone. The most insidious part of this dynamic is that it's hard to recognize at first. People who lack empathy are often skilled at masking their behavior with charm, using superficial warmth to cover up the coldness beneath. They might be affectionate when it benefits them, but once they have what they want, they retreat back into indifference or worse, disdain. This emotional unpredictability keeps you on edge, unsure of when you'll get the support you need or when they'll pull away. There's something deeply powerful within us that often goes unnoticed, the ability to feel when something just isn't right. We've all experienced it at some point in our lives, that inexplicable sense of discomfort or unease around someone, even if they've said all the right things. This is what we call intuition, and it's one of the most vital tools we have to protect ourselves from harm. Our gut feeling, often a subtle but undeniable sensation, can be one of the strongest indicators that something is wrong in a relationship or situation, even when everything seems fine on the surface. Intuition is not a mystical power or an arbitrary feeling. It's a deep, subconscious understanding built on the sum of our experiences, observations, and instincts. It's our brain's ability to pick up on tiny cues that we might not consciously recognize, but which our body and mind process in ways that guide us to a deeper truth. Our intuition notices patterns in body language, tone of voice, or inconsistencies in what's being said. While the logical mind is trying to make sense of things, our gut is often saying, "Pay attention, something is off here." The key with intuition is that it's not just a vague, fleeting feeling. It's often a strong, visceral reaction that tells you that something is out of alignment. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation where everything seems fine, but a knot forms in your stomach or your heart begins to race for no apparent reason? That's your body picking up on subtle cues that your conscious mind hasn't processed yet. It's a red flag, a warning that your gut is trying to send you about the person or the situation you're in. However, despite how powerful this internal compass can be, many people tend to dismiss or ignore it, especially in situations where they feel pressured or desire the approval of others. This is particularly true when you're dealing with someone who has manipulative tendencies or who may not have your best interests at heart. The manipulator often knows exactly how to charm you and convince you that everything is fine, even though your gut is screaming otherwise. They might use flattery, act overly kind, or show false vulnerability to win your trust. In these moments, it becomes easy to override your intuition, telling yourself that you're just being paranoid or overly cautious. But ignoring your gut feeling can have serious consequences. When we dismiss our intuition, we put ourselves at risk of being hurt, manipulated, or deceived. Our intuition is our natural defense system, alerting us to danger before our rational mind can catch up. It helps us avoid situations where our well-being is threatened, whether emotionally, physically, or psychologically. When we fail to listen to our intuition, we start to disregard our own instincts and sense of self-preservation. Over time, this can erode our confidence and make us more vulnerable to harmful situations or toxic people. An important aspect of trusting your gut is learning to recognize patterns of behavior. Intuition doesn't always give us direct answers. It often gives us the sense that something doesn't add up. If you find yourself feeling uneasy around a person, ask yourself why. Pay attention to recurring behaviors that feel off. Is this person being inconsistent with their words and actions? Do their gestures or tone of voice seem insincere? Or are they asking you for things that make you feel uncomfortable or pressuring you into decisions too quickly? Your intuition picks up on these small but crucial details and uses them to form a sense of unease. Trust that feeling. It's often trying to tell you that something deeper is at play. One of the challenges of listening to your gut is doubt. Often we dismiss our feelings of discomfort because we think we're being irrational. Our mind will try to overrule our intuition with thoughts like, I'm probably just overreacting, or they didn't mean it that way. But this is where we need to embrace the wisdom of our gut. When something doesn't feel right, it's okay to step back and question the situation. Intuition isn't about being paranoid. It's about being cautious and aware of what's happening around you. It's about acknowledging that sometimes what appears to be a minor issue can turn into a bigger problem if left unchecked. This is particularly important when you're dealing with individuals who have manipulative tendencies. They often use charm and deception to disarm you, making you feel like you're the one overreacting or being overly sensitive. They know how to push your boundaries in a way that feels normal, even though it's not. They may say things like, you're too quick to judge people, or why can't you just trust me? But these comments are meant to gaslight you into doubting your instincts. They want to make you question whether your gut feelings are based on reality, hoping you'll second guess yourself enough to let them continue their harmful behavior. When you trust your gut, however, you empower yourself. Listening to your intuition is a way of showing respect for your own feelings, needs, and boundaries. It is not a sign of weakness or paranoia. It is a powerful, self-preserving act of self-love. And it's important to note that trusting your gut doesn't always require an immediate decision. It may simply mean taking a step back.